Not long after Professor Bardsley had exited Cassidy's room, Dr. Pallida appeared beside him, smiling with delight. She had mentioned that she would be following him, though admittedly he hadn't really thought about it until she reappeared. At any rate, she seemed to be pleased with his work, which was satisfying to him. Very few people ever took interest in his darker side, but he rather liked that she did. Masterful, Professor. I admit, if you did not have my respect before, you have it now. You are definitely worthy of being my collaborative partner in a study in this town, she said, letting out a laugh. Though it is a shame. You would have enjoyed being a ghost. You can observe all sorts of things, and it is such beautiful, perfect liberation. I would not give it up for the world. Professor Bardsley chuckled politely, shaking his head. Perhaps you may enjoy it, but personally I don't think it's quite my style. It has been interesting, to be sure, but I believe I could accomplish more while alive. But I do hope we could still work together if you are alive, Dr. Pallida continued. There is still so much more to this town that needs to be recorded, observed, and analyzed. The experiment is over, and now it is time for the analysis of what happened here and what an impact this town will have had. And, of course, I would love to compare the cases of this and WaffleNet, she grinned. Besides, you must know how rare it is to find somebody who thinks as we do. Somebody who understands that morality should not get in the way of the progress of human knowledge. Professor Bardsley smiled at this. She really did think the same way he did, and it was so very fascinating. So appealing, even. He had always enjoyed watching society, observing the psyche of people who were so very different from himself, but this was new. This was someone he could relate to, and it was just so thrilling, somehow. I would be honored to work with you, Dr. Pallida, he told her. While I believe, as a whole, we would be more effective alive, I'm certain the chill of the night, or winter's wrath as the case may be, would have use for one with power over the dead, such as yourself. Cassidy groaned, massaging her temples as she agonized over her notes. This potion was so complicated. She could see the logic that went into it, and poring over her chemistry books was helping, but it was so advanced. Honestly, she wasn't sure it was possible to modify it in the way Bardsley was. No, she had to do this. It had to be possible. For Jonathan, if nothing else. You don't have to do this for me, Cass. Cassidy gasped, looking up from her book at the sound of the voice. There stood, oh, woo, it was the ghost of her best friend, Jonathan. He was floating a foot above the floor, looking down at her with a concerned frown. Please, don't let him do this to you, he pleaded. I don't care if I don't come back. You have to fight back. No, I can't, Cassidy muttered. If I don't do it, he'll just find someone else to kill, Chantel or Susie or... She sighed, massaging her temples again. If I do this, he'll let us live. Maybe this is the only way I can help. Bringing the Mafia back wouldn't be helping, Jonathan pointed out. Even if they let us live, they're going to take over Ipham Cove. Maybe we could escape, Cassidy suggested. Maybe I could use the potion on someone else afterward. I don't know. I'm so sick of death, John. I have to try. Jonathan was silent, not sure how to respond to this. Cassidy was so determined, so set on making things right, even though the world around her was falling apart. She wanted so badly to help, but was this really helping at all? Or was she just telling herself that it was so she could feel better about doing it? The time passed in silence. Cassidy continued going over the notes, slowly starting to make sense of it all. She took a strange sort of confidence in this, scribbling down some notes of her own. She just might be able to figure this out. She could do this. It was too bad that the victory left such a bitter taste in her mouth. Dr. Pallida seemed a little disappointed, but respected Professor Bardsley's choice. She mentioned not having to act as a ghost, but what did that matter anymore? Not only did everyone already know his true nature, the Mafia had won. It didn't matter anymore what people thought of him, because no one could stop him now. He let out a laugh at the thought. He was unstoppable. But Dr. Pallida continued, distracting him from his thoughts. She suggested going back outside to watch the aftermath of the recent mob killing, the sister from the church, as he recalled. It was the last thing he watched before going off on his little side trip. Professor Bardsley smiled at the suggestion. That sounds like an excellent idea, he agreed. I wonder if the mob has caught up to Gunderson yet. I'd love to see that fool meet his... His voice trailed off as a sound caught his ears. A distant rumbling. An explosion? It sounded like it was coming from the beach, he thought. He frowned. What would cause an explosion at the beach? How odd. I wonder what that was, he said aloud. He was torn. He was curious about the explosion, but he also wanted to check on the mob. He glanced at Dr. Pallida, wondering what she wanted to do. Cassidy Jackson worked through the night. This was partly by choice, a grim determination coupled with a far-flung hope that the sooner she finished, the sooner she could get away from the demented Professor Bardsley and attempt to move on with her life, and partly because Bardsley would accept no alternative. As Cassidy worked, he hovered above her, occasionally demanding progress reports in his silky, chilly voice. He also frequently reminded her what was at stake, not just Jonathan, but her grandfather, too. "Their lives are in your hands, Cassidy," he whispered into her ear on more than one occasion. And then, around 2 a.m, still sitting cross-legged on the saggy twin bed in her dorm room, finally she turned and said to him, "I've squared away the formulas, I think." "You think?" he rasped in reply. "I have," she clarified. "They're ready. I'm ready." "Excellent," he said, a smile twisting between his lips. "Let's go to the chemistry lab, then. It's time to brew." "It's done," Cassidy said as a frigid dawn broke. "Are you sure?" demanded that silky, silky voice. "Yes, I'm sure," she said, and hated that she meant it. On the one hand, it meant Jonathan could come back to life. But once he had, the other people who would follow him back to the world of the living. For a moment, Cassidy considered shattering the large beaker of potion that she'd just created, letting the clear liquid seep into the gummy tiles of the chemistry lab's floor. It would incite Bardsley's wrath, surely, and he would hurt her grandfather, and Jonathan would stay dead. But would it be worth it? Part of her thought so. A large part of her. "I wouldn't," Bardsley leered as he noticed the way Cassidy's hand twitched towards the beaker. "I have your notes, your musings. I would just find another person to brew it." He floated very close to her then, his ghostly cheek pressed against her warm one. "Now, Cassidy," he breathed, "let's go try this out, shall we?" Not long later, inside Cassidy's dorm room, Jonathan Mallory gasped back to life, with a bruise blooming around his neck, but otherwise no worse for the wear. Professor Bardsley grinned as a sobbing Cassidy enfolded her friend into a desperate hug. "Excellent spending the night with you, Cassidy," Bardsley said, the beaker balanced carefully in his hands. "And now I have other places to be." He started to float out of the dorm room, pausing only to stare for a moment at Cassidy and croon to her, "I'll see you later, And then he was gone. After returning to Ipham Cove proper from the Pretty Boy campus, Professor Bardsley floated about the town on a mission, to rally together a certain percentage of the town's ghosts, as well as 3 specific individuals from amongst the town's living. Joyous news dripped from his lips, and once they were all collected, together through the freezing morning they headed to the Ipham morgue. It was locked, but this did not matter. Bardsley had picked the lock of the chemistry lab earlier tonight, and now he picked this one, and then, together, they entered. 3 breathing, heart-beating beings and 4 ethereal ones. But by the time they exited a while later... "Why should I trust you?" the ghost of Piper Boudreaux challenged Bardsley as they started down the corridor, towards the break room where Dakota had passed out sometime in the night, and now slumbered with their head flopped over the laminate table. "You killed me, after all," she reminded. "And now I'm bringing you back," Bardsley said thickly. "If you don't want to, Miss Boudreaux." "I get to come back first, right, Juan?" Travis asked anxiously. "Not if you keep calling me that." "He's reviving Chill first," Lindsay Lucas said. "You'll have to wait your turn." "Quiet," Bardsley said as they reached the break room. "We don't want Dakota to hear us coming." "Must we really kill them?" Lindsay asked. I thought we agreed on no more pointless deaths, so long as the townspeople cooperate." "This one is necessary," Bardsley said. "It might take a while to revive everyone, and we can't have Dakota realizing we're here and ruining things. Now, let's do this." They entered the break room. The sound of the door opening awoke the morgue worker. Pink hair frizzed, they blinked and stared in confusion at those who entered the space. The Mafia ghosts. Their hearts sank into their stomach as they realized this. Bardsley, Boudreaux, the crazy Travis Richam, and the seemingly sweet Lindsay Lucas, and 3 others were with them. Alive people. "Good morning, Dakota," said Alan Mathers Fitzgibbon with a wave. "It's not necessary to greet your victims," Nathan Lucas said as he rolled his eyes. In his hand he had a fat, gleaming knife, its blade reflecting against the harsh, artificial light that blazed overhead. "In Abominable Ipham, stop this! You're not Abominable Ipham anymore, Nathan, and she's not Chill of the Night. We're Winter's Wrath, remember?" Both of them glanced briefly at Hermia Smith. Diminutive Hermia Smith, her dark hair tied back in a messy bun. Hermia, who'd blindsided all of them, and yet who in the end had helped unite the Mafias into one solid front. "Stop bickering," Hermia said, "and kill Dakota, Nathan. Kill Dakota so we can get on with this whole revival thing that Bardsley's gone through such an effort to arrange." "Revival thing?" Dakota echoed, their last words. Yes, it's going to be great, Nathan said, shooting a smile at the ghost of his twin, Lindsay. Then he plunged the knife into Dakota Taylor Allen's heart. An hour later, 7 breathing, beating-hearted beings strode out of the Ifam morgue. By this time, most of the residents of Ifam Cove had stirred, and many of them meandered around Main Street on their morning errands. They all paused and stared in shock at the briskly moving group. Soon the group stopped at the town square, and for a while they stood there, waiting for a crowd to gather. It did not take very long, on account of the fact that word of the suddenly alive mafiosos had spread like wildfire. Before long, nearly everybody in town, including those who'd spent the night hunting Morty without success, had drifted to the square, gaping in a sort of stunned awe. "Shall we begin?" Bardsley asked his fellow mafiosos eventually. In his body once more, Bardsley was beaming from ear to ear. He radiated power, practically glowed with it. "I think we shall," agreed Hermia Smith. "Take it away, Professor." "Excellent." Professor Bardsley looked at the crowd. "Good morning, Ifam Cove. You are now gazing upon the 7 people who have brought this town to its knees, and it was so much fun. But the collateral damage was severe. Fixable, but severe. And so today, the united, revived Winter's Wrath has a very nice proposal for you all." He gestured to Nathan. "My colleague shall explain it now." "As Bardsley was saying," Nathan began, "we have a proposal for you. It seems as if we all have a common enemy, Mortimer Gunderson, who is presently hiding somewhere in this town. Though my friends and I had so much fun with all the murder, we're tired. We wish to call a truce. First, you guys take care of Morty for us. We want his head as much as you do. And then, so long as you respect our authority and provide for us as is," he paused, "expected, then, well, we can have a harmonious relationship, the lot of us. It'll be simple," Lindsay Lucas picked up. "Every business provides us with a nice portion of the proceeds, smaller in the winter, larger in the tourist season. We are treated as the superior peoples we have already proven to be. We will allow for the peaceable cremation and funerals for all those who have died in the past week, and then life shall carry on. And just in case you bright folks get the idea to murder us once again, well," Bardsley grinned lecherously, "I think that I am standing here now, as well as Miss Boudreaux, Miss Lucas, and Mr. Richam, proves that death is not a major problem for us. We can overcome it. And so, if you kill us, we will arise again. We cannot lose. So it is best for everyone to obey. And if you think it would be easier to flee, well, that is not an option either," Nathan said. "We cannot profit off an empty town, and the tourists would not come to some place without businesses and life, so I think it's best for everyone to stay." This was most definitely a threat. "But first," Hermia Smith said, "to prove to us that everything is copacetic, as Nathan said, we want Morty Gunderson's head, just as a token of your goodwill. So go get us that head, friends. Get it for us, and we can all live happily ever after." "What are you waiting for?" Bardsley asked, when the crowd did not immediately disperse back into a Morty Gunderson hunting party. "Your new rulers said go, so go." It was a command, and it was terrifying. After another few moments of shocked staring, the crowd disintegrated as they obeyed the missive. As Bardsley watched them go, he laughed. They all did. "Now," Bardsley said, once everyone but he and his fellow mafiosos were gone. He gazed up at the flagpole in the middle of the town square, which boasted the Ifam Cove flag. It flapped lightly in the morning breeze. "I think this needs some replacing, just to remind the town of who rules the roost." "We cannot let them forget," agreed Lindsay Lucas. "They will never forget," said Bardsley.